Hello, welcome. Today we have a special guest, Heidi Venture, founder of Vital Reset, a psilocybin treatment center in Hood River, Oregon. I am so interested in this psilocybin therapy. It's really brand new. It seems like it's come like a really recent thing. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's not that new. Tribes have been using psilocybin and other hallucinogens for 10,000 years. And what's new is the system in America has finally reached a point where we need to get back to using hallucinogens for treating mental health problems. And we've there's a lot of research has been done. There was a big thing back in, I think, about 1970. Richard Nixon made it illegal to do research on hallucinogens. And then just gradually in the 90s, it started loosening up. And now there are thousands of studies on psilocybin, LSD, ibogaine, ayahuasca, all the classic psychedelics. And most of them show that for certain uses, psilocybin really beats all of the pharmaceutical ideas we've come up with and often serves as better than therapy because you get into the basic stuff in your brain that's holding you back.
That's amazing. Okay, so it's really an ancient medicine. It's not new,
Yeah.
really, but it's now the laws are changing, and now in Oregon you can get psilocybin therapy.
Yeah, in Oregon in 2020, we had a Measure 109 on the ballot, got on the ballot by people going around and getting signatures. And the intent of that, the people who were doing it, was they would get it on the ballot in 2020, it would fail, and they would see what they needed to change in the measure to get it to pass. That is not what happened. It was passed by well over 60% of the people in Oregon. And then the Oregon Health Authority had to come up with, how do you turn this law into administrative rules that make it a safe system for people to access psilocybin? So they spent a couple years doing that. And then the first licenses in Oregon were released in 2023. We got the fourth license for a psilocybin service center in the state back in June of 2023 and had our first journey in the service center in July. And we've been working ever since. We're a rural town. Hood River's not a big place. It's a town of about 6,000 people. I think it's the only rurally located service center in the state. At least I keep saying that. Um, yeah, what else do you need to know about that? The system that Oregon came up with includes a lot of little guardrails. So there's a lot of paperwork that the client has to sign. There's a required preparation with your facilitator. You're required by the law to have one prep session. I require my clients to have 3 or 4 prep sessions, and that's the time when they get their questions answered and their fears allayed, and they figure out why they're doing this plant medicine, psilocybin. So they have an intention for what they're trying to get out of it. And then, so that's part one. Part two is the administration session when they actually come into the service center. We don't send people home with mushrooms, that's illegal. We bring them in. We've talked about the dose, we've talked about the different strains of mushrooms, and they take their mushrooms. They come in and they get comfortable first. So they get into their room. Maybe they've brought a picture of, people they love or some symbolic stuff. They just settle in, get ready, and when they are completely ready, they take the mushroom usually as a tea, although it's probably more appropriate to call it a soup because we put powdered homogenized mushroom into a little mug, add hot water, let it steep for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is when it's at its height of potency, and then they just drink it down with the powder and all. So it is more like a soup. There's a lot of other ways you can take the mushrooms. We've got gummies and chocolates, but really the kind of the classic way is to make this mushroom tea with it. And then for some people, they start feeling something in 20 minutes. For some people, it's 45 minutes. For some people, we give them a booster dose. If they're on antidepressants, often people need a booster dose to really get off the ground, but we don't want to give them too much. So we start with what we think is the smallest dose that'll work, and then we can boost them one or two times. And then the neat thing that happens is that psilocybin gets in your tummy, and your belly and your liver work together to turn it into a smaller molecule called psilocin. And the psilocin molecule has an incredible affinity for your nerve cells and specifically the serotonin receptors on your nerve cells. So all through your body, goes into your stomach, ends up in your bloodstream, and every time it gets near a nerve cell, it's going to grab all the serotonin receptors. Each little psilocin molecule is going to grab those, and it starts sending a signal. It sends immediately starts sending a signal, and what we think the signal is saying is connect. So that nerve cell will start building more connective receptors. It'll start sending out more little tendrils, dendritic tendrils, to try to reach the next nerve cells to reach out and connect. And there's a point when you reach a tipping point when enough of these signals to connect have been sent and enough connection has been made that your brain becomes connected in a way that is non-ordinary. So your usual brain thing is, things are just managed. They're managed by your smart old prefrontal cortex and the default mode network, and everything kind of goes along. But when you get this super connected state, lots of parts of your brain that have never talked to each other are able to trade information. And the parts of your brain that have been controlling how much information gets going across things, they kind of settle down and stop interfering with that. And for most people, they find out new things they always knew but never knew. So they'll connect things together about what's going on in their life. It's amazing mental health. We're not supposed to call it a treatment. Let me see. What can I call it? It's an amazing mental health intervention. So for me, I had 40 years of treatment resistant depression. I tried all the things except for the electroconvulsive therapy. Like, I tried everything. And in the end, it was one big mushroom trip in 2020 that got rid of my depression, and I haven't seen it since. And that,
Wow.
yeah. So,
That's life changing to get out of that darkness, isn't it?
oh yeah, I have a life now, and I didn't even know, like, I had no idea how much my depression was inhibiting me from having a full life.
That's I've heard so many good stories about this, and that's why I wrote a whole blog post about it, because then I'm thinking, as somebody with diabetes, anything I do, like going to the dentist, I'm like, am I going to get low blood sugar while they're working on my mouth, for example? Like, and
Mm.
so I manage my diabetes with an insulin pump, and some people use insulin shots, and there's different ways. But the whole thing is, with diabetes, it's so tricky to keep everything in range, and it's very easy to get a little bit too much insulin, and then you go low. And I mean, the treatment for going low is just something with sugar in it, so it's simple to recover from that. But I worry, in a psilocybin session, um, if I'm not eating, and like, and also I don't know, like, from a psychedelic experience with things like what I want to eat, like, could I eat? Like, I don't know. There's so many questions and so much fear there. So I think that's why I wrote about this topic on my site, Insulin Pump Life, and you so kindly reposted on your site. So have you had any experiences with somebody with diabetes?
Well, it's interesting. It really hasn't been on our radar to talk to people about it. And then I don't even know how, oh, I know, I've got Chat GPT looking for new articles about psilocybin all the time. And I think that's how your diabetes article came up. And when that came up, I just thought, oh my gosh, we just don't even know what we're doing when we've got somebody with diabetes coming in. And it's just so insightful to see that there are ways that we can, tell people this is what other diabetics do. And I think it'll make things safer for our clients. And it certainly makes me more excited about serving people with diabetes. I have a client with diabetes right now who's prepping for a journey. And, we'll definitely use what you wrote to help them figure it out. And, one of the things I see is with somebody with diabetes, we need to have something sugary in the room. And we need to have something, whether it's a fresh orange juice or a
Yeah,
candy
orange
bar.
juice
We
is
need to,
great. Orange juice is quick,
yeah.
right? And drinking something, it's sometimes you don't want to eat. So yeah,
Mhm.
that like solves it immediately. And I mean, going high, it's like, well, your blood sugar goes high, you can always bring it down later, right? But um,
Mm,
it's that, yeah, when you go low, you get low blood sugar, you get like anxiety. And so I'm thinking, if
mhm.
you're trying to improve your mental health, you don't want to have all this fear of going low while you're in
Yeah.
the middle of everything.
Yeah, and I think going low might impact the trip. I haven't talked to anybody who's done this, but your brain uses a tremendous amount of glycogen and glucose during a psilocybin journey. So, knowing that that's going to happen, I know it happens because at the end of every journey, I'm exhausted and have like I just don't have any energy. And if I start eating some sugar and, refill those things, I feel better. So I also kind of wondered about when I read your article, people are getting IV treatment, they're getting IV hydration treatment. Some people do this after a psilocybin journey, just like you do it after a big 50K run. I've wondered about that for our diabetes clients. Like, what would that actually be helpful? We've got a place a block away, and they will come and they'll bring an IV treatment for somebody if we want. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's interesting. I don't know. I would imagine, I mean, as long as the person has ideally they have a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, because then you can see the graph and like that's a wealth of information. And then you can, so, but you're talking about this after work.
Or
Can you tell me
after,
more?
yeah.
It's a hydration, or what is it that you're talking about?
I think the IV therapy, this is something that has been going on for a few years with people who have too much money. If you go on a run, if you exhaust yourself, if you dance all night at a rave, or if you get drunk, a lot of people do it. They get drunk and they do an IV therapy for their hangover.
Oh,
And I've been interested in seeing if it would lessen the feeling tired after a psilocybin journey. And
yeah.
since I think that's connected to blood sugar,
Yeah, probably
I'd
is.
like
Yeah.
to
So I
try it.
guess I'd have to try that out and monitor CGM and see how that works.
Mm,
Yeah, that's
yeah, and the client has to do all that monitoring. The facilitator's not allowed to mess with any medical anything. So
hmm.
this is considered by Oregon to not be medical. Um, yeah, so we're not allowed to mess with that stuff. If you're really worried about it as a person with diabetes, you can bring a support person with you to your journey and they can manage that. They could be the person who's looking at the app. They don't even have to be in the room. They could just be monitoring and come in when they see something that needs to be done.
I think that would be really reassuring, just in case, just don't know what's going to happen, and that would alleviate that worry.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So you spoke about there's a lot of preparation ahead of time, right? And then
Mhm.
there's the actual day of the experience,
Right.
and then integration afterwards too.
Yeah, so the experience lasts about between 3 and 5 hours, and people typically they will know when they've got liftoff. They will know because it's non-ordinary. It's like
Lift
you're
off.
in,
That's a great term for it, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. You're in non-ordinary reality, and you can tell because everything feels more real. Like things look more real, your vision might be sharper. Like my vision, I can read when I'm on mushrooms, which I can't do without my glasses
Oh,
otherwise.
wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so it's the possibility of having perfect vision is there in my system, right? It's
Yeah.
there because I know it because I get it on mushrooms. Anyway, so they get liftoff. Liftoff lasts between 3 and 5 hours, and then there's kind of this slow slope back down to landing. And then you feel tired and you have a snack. And when you're ready, when you're really ready and feel okay, you go home. Somebody comes and picks you up. You can't drive yourself. Somebody comes and picks you up. And the next day, you can start integration. I have an argument with my facilitators about this. Some of them don't start integration right away. I start integration during preparation. So if somebody's goal is to have more joy in their life and less depression, they have to work on a plan for what are they going to do that brings joy into their life for the 2 weeks after their journey. You have this amazing neuroplasticity during time of 2 to 4 weeks during which you can change ingrained habits. And I want people to take advantage of every single day of that neuroplasticity. So they might come up with, it used to make me happy to be out in nature. So I'm going to be out in nature every day. Or I used to feel happy when I was creating art. So maybe they'll put creating art in there. For me, it's stand-up comedy. I make sure I always watch a lot of stand-up comedy after a journey because I want a lot of laughter in my life. So whatever I want during that 2 weeks, I'm going to focus on. Other people take integration, uh, I don't know, they come up with lots of different ways to define what happened during your journey and figure out, what are you going to do? But I find that people usually know, like they know what they need to change, and they just need somebody saying, "Yeah, go do it, do it." So that's integration. I meet with my clients the day after their journey, a week after, 2 weeks after, and a month after, so that they have, about a month and a half of me just telling them they're doing great and reminding them that, here's why you're doing this. You have neuroplasticity today. Get out there and change that pathway. Yeah.
Wow.
And then
So, yeah.
maybe they come back for another journey in 3 months or a year. Maybe they never come back. In the research studies, a lot of people who come with depression are just one and done. They do one treatment and, 5 years later, they still don't have depression. And they don't, they did back then, back then, 5 years ago, in the old days, you couldn't just go get another journey. You couldn't just go back to the research study and say, I want to try it again. But now they can.
That's terrific that this is becoming available because I mean, I just don't think that traditional like SSRIs are working for so many people. Like it might work short term, but I see so many examples where people are, they're stuck on this medicine, but their depression hasn't gone away. Um,
Exactly.
so, and I mean, diabetes, I mean, I got diabetes late in life, well, 30 or so, but it's a life-changing thing, and that can be any life-changing diagnosis can really cause the stress and anxiety and trigger depression. And I don't think there's enough mental health support. So like this could be the mental health support for people that are dealing with a new diagnosis of diabetes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really hadn't thought about that. The client I'm currently working with, it just completely turned her life upside down. And she's like you, was diagnosed as an adult with no prior reason for this to be happening. I think diagnosed type 1. So, and it just kind of ruined her life because of the anxiety, not because of what was actually happening, but the anxiety that she felt has just really turned things inside out.
So the psilocybin mushrooms, they make the brain have this plasticity, like the new connections forming in your brain, and then you have to act on that afterwards to make the most of that.
That's correct.
Wow,
Yeah.
I mean, this is astounding. Then, so I wonder what else would be of interest. So, can anybody travel here to Oregon? Do they need to live in Oregon already for this?
No, they can come. The state of the world is that Oregon went first with a legal regulated program. There's other places you can get mushrooms. You can go to Costa Rica, you can go to the Netherlands, but they're not legal regulated and safe. Every place else in the world is missing at least one of those. Usually regulated is the part that they're missing. In Canada, mushrooms are therapy is available to people, but you have to go through this process with your doctor and the system, their health system, and very few people are able to get approved to do it. So legal, safe, but not available.
Are there
Yeah,
different
so
different kinds of mushrooms for different things?
well, we're only allowed in Oregon to use Psilocybe cubensis,
Okay.
which is one, it's a common mushroom that contains psilocybin, but it comes in different strains. So people have bred the Psilocybe cubensis mushroom to have different effects based on other chemicals that are inside the mushroom. And there isn't enough research on this, so we really don't know if this is a real thing, if this is really a difference, or if it's just kind of a placebo effect. Here, pumpkin hillbilly mushroom, it'll make you laugh. Oh, yeah, so there's different strains and then there's different ways to take it. There's the mushroom, the whole mushrooms. The problem with the whole mushrooms is when they're tested, you don't, every mushroom is different from every other mushroom. So they test a few mushrooms in the batch, and then we have to assume what the dose is based on weight. So we get an idea of how strong those mushrooms are. Mostly we use homogenized powdered mushrooms. So they're tested, they're dried really dry, really cracker crisp dry, ground up really fine, and then mixed, homogenized thoroughly. And then that gets tested. And we absolutely know if we give you this little bottle of mushrooms, you are getting the research dose of 25 milligrams of psilocybin.
Oh,
So
I
that's
see. So much,
do that.
otherwise there's too much variation between the mushrooms to figure it out, huh?
Yeah, we you can be close, but you can never be exact. And with the powdered mushrooms, we can be exact. And then there's a couple places that are making mushrooms in chocolate. So they put that mushroom powder in chocolate. And it's kind of hard to eat enough chocolate if you have to have a big dose. Like the last time I did it, I just felt like I was eating a lot of chocolate.
Yeah, that wouldn't be so great, especially with diabetes and chocolate and sugar. It's like, no,
Oh
probably
yeah,
don't
there'd
want
be a
all that.
bunch of sugar. Your crowd is not going to want to do the gummies either because it's just sugar.
Yeah,
Right? So
yeah.
your crowd's going to want to do the powdered mushrooms, I think.
Anything else coming to you? I'm trying.
Well, something that's coming to me is the broad variety of conditions that people are experimenting with psilocybin. So there's research going on, plus there's this citizen science stuff that's going on. Like up until last week, I hadn't heard of anybody studying ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. I hadn't heard of anything, but on Reddit, there's a whole group of people with ALS who are using psilocybin mushrooms and getting relief from some of their symptoms. As of last week, there's an actual research study happening now. So we'll get a little more information. Also, same thing is happening with MS, multiple sclerosis. Same thing is happening with Alzheimer's. We've had quite a few people come in with dementia at some level using mushrooms to see if it can help with that. And I have no idea where we're at with results on that. But so we've got those things. You've got your usual depression, anxiety, PTSD, complex PTSD, um, trauma, just any kind of trauma. The mushrooms seem to have, they're doing this connect, disconnect thing in your brain, and they do seem to go to areas of high trauma, things that can really be upsetting to your balance and, the way you think. And they seem to bring up those things in the journey more often than not. So I've had quite a few people come in and remember something from, some trauma from their childhood, some abuse that they had completely buried.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and they bring it up in the session a lot. Sometimes that's it. They bring it up, they shout it out or yell it out or whatever. They feel it, they remember it, they honor it, and then it's gone. Or for some people, they discover that in the journey and then they spend 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months figuring out how to integrate that into their life, their own life story, the narrative of their own life.
Yeah, that would be very surprising to not have any memory and then have that memory come back. I guess sort of like hypnosis can sometimes do that. You can retrieve memories that have
Mhm.
been suppressed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hope that this can help all kinds of like conditions that have to do with like neurological things.
Specifically things that are around neurological rigidity. So one of the things they've learned about depression is that the brain is stuck in patterns of thinking, and there's really no way yourself to get out of that pattern. You have to do something like EMDR or mushrooms or hypnosis, as you were saying, to get that pattern to change, to shift. I mean, we all know how hard it is to change a habit. Just
Right.
try, just try to change any habit, even just looking at your phone. It's so hard.
Yeah, and that's another topic because all these apps are addictive, right? And that's causing mental health problems as
Mhm,
well. That looking at your phone all the time and notifications and
mhm,
wanting that instant reward or that doom scrolling, and
mhm.
it's like a
Yeah.
whole it's a whole
Yeah,
topic.
and addiction is one of the rising stars in the mushroom industry because there's plenty of proof that mushrooms help people with alcohol use disorder, and we're just gradually finding out that also smoking, that's proven by research now that you can get help with smoking. And what else? We it depends a lot on you. If you're addicted to your phone and that's what you want to work on, you can do a mushroom trip and spend the next 2 to 4 weeks weaning yourself off your phone and see how that goes.
And
So
is there
no
something
guarantee
with the
it'll work.
mushrooms that like connect you with nature too? Is there something there? Like I haven't
I
seen.
always feel it. I mean, I've had some amazing experiences with mushrooms and plants. Just looking at a plant while I'm on mushrooms and having it be, I don't know, magical connection, just crazy magical stuff with plants. And
Wow.
people often want to do their mushrooms out in nature. That's kind of the gold standard for a recreational self-development kind of trip. But, what we find is if you've got an eye mask on and you do mushrooms, your focus is on what's going on in your brain, and the mushrooms do something completely different. And I also think that in Oregon, and this will probably happen in Colorado too, because of the safety guardrails that we have and because they are so extensive, people feel very safe when they come into Vital Reset. I think they feel safe in most service centers. I don't think it's all. I think there's some service centers that are, they're more party focused and recreation focused. But the places that are really looking at mental health, we want you to feel like you are going to be taken care of and nothing bad is going to happen to you. And that changes the way the mushrooms work. It frees them up to not have to work on your fear of them and just be able to work on the stuff in your brain that's stuck and gooey and sticky and needs something.
Okay, so the blocking out visuals with the blindfold helps that with the
Yeah,
therapy part going inside your own mind and
yep.
it's in
It
your subconscious.
puts the focus into you and your subconscious and what's in your brain what's eating you in your brain that you need to take out and compost.
And is there usually like music that goes along with it too?
Oh yeah, music is for 95% of people. Music is one of the most important parts of the journey because music is emotional, it's evocative. So all of our facilitators have different playlists they use for some of them use the same playlist over and over with every client. Some of them adapt their playlist, and some people make a brand new playlist for each client. They talk about what kind of music you like. I use a basic playlist and then I like to add into it, and it's got waves. It starts out real calm for the first hour, and then it'll have these emotional waves where some bittersweet music or some slightly scary music or something that feels super happy, that those kinds of waves will come along in the journey, and you ride up that emotional wave and then you kind of calm down, and that also helps your brain go into different spots in your memory, in your brain, and clean stuff up a little bit. So yeah, music is super important. We have a couple of facilitators who will play guitar for you if that's what you want. I am not that person. That's possible. I also like to put in, if people are interested in their heritage, like if they're interested in their DNA heritage, I like to put in some indigenous music. And you can find European indigenous music. So for those of us who are white and don't seem to have any kind of indigenous background at all, I'm Norwegian, so I found some just crazy Norwegian trance music, and I use that for myself. I've got a great Lithuanian podcast playlist that's from a group that says they've been meeting as a church for 5,000 years and came up with this music for rituals. And yeah, I just try to find that kind of stuff.
That's outstanding. Yeah, so the music helps with the journey and all the emotions, and it's getting those emotions out that makes the connections, or maybe the connections make the emotions, and that is the treatment or the therapy.
Yeah, and then there's this alternate way of explaining what's going on, which is uh, spiritual. So the indigenous people that have been using mushrooms for thousands of years explain it spiritually. They say that the mushrooms have a spirit, and the spirit of the mushrooms is helping you interact with your own spirit and with um, like spirits of your ancestors that might be impacting you, with your powerful spirit animals, with the plant spirits. So that's a whole other way of approaching it that isn't right for everybody. But for somebody who are comfortable with that level of woo, We do have one facilitator who's shamanically trained, and I've had a journey with her, and it is completely different. It's
Oh,
completely
wow.
different to be in a journey with somebody who is connected to that part of non-ordinary reality and really sees the world through that lens.
Oh, that
So I
sounds so
came into this,
interesting. Wow.
yeah, I came in as a total atheist, and I am not an atheist anymore. I think I'm an animist, but I'm opening the door to other change, right?
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that. I've read studies that say, oh, if you have a spiritual experience, that it works even better, that you're more likely
Yeah,
to
the
have a more
mystical
significant.
experience. Yeah, in fact, we have the mystical experience questionnaire, and if I really think somebody's had a strong mystical experience, I will give them that questionnaire just to reinforce that this is what really happened to you. Remember, you did
Yeah.
you did talk to your dead grandma. You
Yeah. So there's this all like, so like, do you think there's two different ways of looking at it? Like one way is like the mushroom is external and it's something from that is doing it, or the other thing is it's just unlocking what's already inside of you. Like, could it be either one?
it might be just both. Yeah, it might be both. Because I mean, you're not without the ability to control and direct the journey somewhat. I try not to at this point. I trust what's happening in the process enough that I just try to melt and relax and let the mushrooms show me or do whatever they need to do. But you can pull yourself out if something's scary. You can open your eyes and say, "I'm scared." I've had quite a few clients who have had scary times in their journey. Some facilitators just let that keep rolling, and that becomes a big part of their journey. It depends on what they wanted. If they came in wanting to have less depression and what they ended up doing was accessing a bunch of fear, I might interrupt what's going on if they're fearful. I might say, let's take a bathroom break. Let's go look at this piece of art. Let's get up and look out the window for a minute and just try to interrupt that fear cycle because it's probably not something they need to feel for an hour. It's probably something they just need to be aware. This is in you. This is something you're afraid of.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're helping
And I
them
take,
to get out of the bad trip. So it's not a bad experience. And
right. I
yeah.
don't want people to have a bad experience if possible. However, we've had people have really challenging journeys, just really challenging journeys where they were scared or they got lost or they got in a loop. And so far, all of the people who've had really challenging journeys have come back a couple months later and said, this changed my life in a really good way. So even though it was hard at the time, the outcome was good. So we don't want people to be afraid of challenging journeys. And like anything that people are concerned about, I have a blog I have a blog. Right now, I think I have 100 blog posts. So anything you're worried about, it's in there. And there's a little search bar down at the bottom of the page on vitalreset.com. You can find challenge, you can put in challenging, and you'll come up with 3 or 4 things I've written about it.
I will definitely link to that in the description here. Yeah, vitalreset.com. Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I read some of your posts there. Yeah, you have a lot of material. Yeah, there's so many different topics to talk about, right? Um,
there are. Yeah, in fact, I just wrote a blog this morning about pain, chronic pain and psychedelics. I have been working on this for I don't know, the whole time I've been doing mushrooms, the whole 5 years, I've been trying to work on my chronic back pain. And just the last couple journeys, I figured some stuff out. I got some new ways to approach it and got introduced to some ways that people work on they call it neuroplastic pain. It's where pain, like the injury's over. The injury's way gone. You're not being injured. I'm sitting here and maybe my nerves are sending a message to my brain that is actually saying we feel a little tight, but my brain has gotten overstimulated with pain from there, so it just takes that message and says, oh, pain. So it turns it into pain. Then I'm feeling pain, and I've got to get up and figure out how to get rid of that pain. So annoying. Anyway, now I'm doing something different. And I feel like we're finally ready to have people with chronic pain come in and have a whole, like a whole way for them to approach their pain that is more effective.
Is it, can you tell me more about what you're doing that's different?
Well, yeah, I don't know. How long do you want to talk? About, I don't know, I've had this chronic pain a very long time. And about 10 years ago, somebody gave me this book called Explain Pain. And I learned through that book, I got my pain level down from 7 on a regular to about 3 or 4 on the regular. And the way I did it was by experimenting with gradually increasing the time I was sitting. And, it was very complex. It was so complex that I stopped wanting to do it when I got the pain level down. So I got this new book from my PT, physical therapist, and it has a much simpler method for just observing your pain in a way that is not grabby or fear filled or increases the pain when your pain is not that bad. So right now my pain's at about a 2. I could close my eyes and go look at that pain. And this is something mushrooms really help you to do. They help you to be in touch with your nervous system. So I can very quickly go find that little pain in my low back and say, huh, hi there. I hear you. I hear that something's going on, and I just want you to know you're safe. And I talk to myself a lot these days. So that's how I talk to myself about the pain. And it's surprising how much difference that has made for my brain. And I'm doing that during the 2 to 4 weeks of neuroplasticity. So I'm adding that little exercise in and teaching my brain something. So anybody who wants to do that, call me because I'm excited to see if it'll work for other people.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that's the whole like yeah, physical pain is maybe a mental, some of it's mental. I guess you have some control of it over it.
It's a rewiring problem. It's not
Yeah.
like it's all in your head. Everything's all in your head. Guess what? Like everything you experience is all in your head.
Yeah, that's like psychedelics when you look and oh, things look differently, right? When you're on
Mhm.
them. So it's like that is an insight in of itself that your mind is creating reality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one to wrap yourself around, really. Because
Yeah.
we live in this world as if we're all living in the same experience, and we're not. We're each creating our own experience based on the sensation input that we get.
Yeah, there's a huge diversity there for sure.
Yeah. But for your folks, like for people with diabetes, I'm kind of curious about what do they want to get specific to diabetes and the diagnosis and I don't
I think
know,
it's probably going to be different for everybody.
mhm,
Um, but in general, of type 1 diabetes, you need insulin. And the biggest mental health thing there is that every time you eat, you have to be very aware that you're eating. You need to count the carbohydrates to determine the insulin dosage. And so eating is no longer something you can do without thinking about it. And mentally, knowing that every time you want to get hungry, you got to think about diabetes is a real mental struggle. And I mean, that seems like the biggest thing, but also probably a lot of fear, or like it's an autoimmune condition. And some people are maybe they're afraid, like they can't trust their body because their body is attacking itself.
yeah,
Um, and then some people are afraid of needles too. And then there are other forms of ways to give insulin, but I mean, being afraid of needles is a problem. And so yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of, and there's also burnout if you've, and if you have had diabetes a long time, maybe there's a lot of guilt and self-blame. Maybe you haven't always been very good about treating the diabetes. A lot of times, if you get it as like a type 1 diabetes as a child and you go through your teenage years, um, it's everything a teenager is going through, and then throw diabetes on top of it, you can see that sometimes you might end up with like medical problems of the diabetes, the blood sugar being out of control for so many years, and now you're living with like neuropathy from that too, or other vision
mhm,
issues. The high blood sugar attacks it causes damage if it's uncontrolled for a long time period. So depending on the
yeah,
person's life story and diabetes story and where they're at, I think it's going to be different. But there's a lot of mental stuff to it, and that's not at all. I don't think that's emphasized at all. And now we have diabetes. Really, the diabetes technology has gotten really good in recent years. Still not good enough because the sensors will fail and the diabetes technology can just stop working. But largely, it's much better than it used to be. But then now what you have is you have all this, it's like somebody who's watching over you all the time and seeing, like, if your doctor looks at your charts and your graph, and your whole life history is there, and maybe you went and partied that night, and maybe your blood sugar went really high and you didn't do anything about it, or maybe you got a bad infusion set and things stopped working. It's all there. Like, there's too much data. I mean, the data is helpful, but would you like to always have that feedback all the time of what's going on in your life and have somebody else look at that too? Yeah.
Like having an icky, abusive boyfriend, like somebody who's
Right.
constantly criticizing you, but then it's half of it's in your head. It's your
Yeah.
own inner critic voice.
And like self-forgiveness is the thing I try to remember all the time, because it's very easy to make a mistake and give too little insulin or too much insulin and then end up low or high.
Yeah.
And that's like it's not always a daily struggle, fortunately now, but it's frequent. And there's more to life than diabetes. But if you're only thinking about diabetes, then that can really build depression too, because you're in this situation you can't get out of. It's like a full-time job that you didn't want. So we could probably get some anger there. So I think there's a ton of emotions to explore. And
Yeah. And one of the best things about mushrooms is for most people, it increases your own self-compassion. And it
yeah, and
sounds like,
self-compassion is, yeah, that's exactly what people need. The
uh,
forgiveness, it,
yeah. And
you,
self-love.
yeah,
I mean, you got this body that's been a disappointment, like
yeah.
I'm disappointed in my body for having chronic pain. And I tell it, I complain about it. And I can imagine as a, person with diabetes, that could be that could be a big part of struggling with loving yourself and being comfortable with what is happening in your life. And it kind of sounds like an eating disorder too,
Well, yeah,
that
it
you're
can cause an
like,
eating disorder, and there's a whole another terminology for that, which is eluding me at the moment. But yeah, diabetes and eating disorder, because you have to pay attention to your food, and you
yeah.
can see how, well, not eating, now your blood sugar does better, but not eating is not the solution, right? So
Mm. It used to be before we could make insulin. That
yeah,
was the treatment. Don't eat.
yeah,
Just
starvation
watch you
diet.
slowly
Yeah.
starve.
Yeah, and then you die. So not eating is not good. But
Yeah.
intermittent fasting, maybe that can work for some people. But ultimately, you have to accept that you're going to have this, probably have some of it up and down with your blood sugar, because that is where we are at with the state of treating diabetes today. It's not perfect. It's very good
Yeah.
compared to what it's been, but it's still like a daily challenge to get it right.
Yeah. And it sounds like the technology also adds to the stress.
I think it does, because it has notifications and alarms and beeps. And yeah, you can silent your notifications, but you probably want the notifications most of the time. So um, yeah, it is. I think it's a very good use of technology, very helpful, but not without its own stress for sure.
Yeah. So what other modalities do people with diabetes use to cope with the mental health effects?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I read some books about diabetes burnout, and I was not too impressed. I think probably therapy by somebody that understands that if they have type 1 diabetes themselves, support groups of other people that have the same condition, right? That I think that is an online support groups, forums, sharing knowledge. That's all helpful. I mean, I'm coming off of one of my next podcast episodes is about relieving things to do to try to relieve the stress, and things that have worked for me are like, well, forest bathing, which is a sort of like a Japanese term. You go out into
Yeah.
nature, smell the flowers, pet an animal, meditation, journaling,
Mhm.
taking it easy on yourself essentially, and take, because also the problem with all the stress is the stress increases insulin resistance, so it becomes harder to actually treat the diabetes if you're stressed. So reducing your stress is going to help with the diabetes.
Wow. This is great. This is just really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and mushrooms in general, not just psilocybin mushrooms, but there's a whole bunch of these functional mushrooms
Mhm.
like reishi, lion's mane, chaga. Um, there's actually so many studies about mushrooms in general improving blood sugar. Um,
Mm.
and there's something they do with modulating the immune system. And yeah, so that is also a very interesting topic. And coffee mushrooms and like mushroom coffees become popular, and some of them
Yeah.
have warnings like if you have diabetes, this is going to affect your blood sugar. And the only problem there is if you're taking this long acting insulin and then suddenly you need less insulin because you're taking mushrooms, then you can go low. So you need to prepare for that, which is like why if you're going to go and have psilocybin therapy, you need to probably talk to people about, maybe adjusting your dosage a little bit lower on the insulin so that you don't go low, or be prepared for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's different insulins have different lengths of how long they last. And
Hmm.
depending on what your insulin you're using, then it might be easier or harder to adjust that. So, um, yeah, I imagine you connect with their doctors. Like somebody has an endocrinologist, you could talk to them about it.
I want to know, like, if anybody watching this knows an endocrinologist or a diabetes educator who has worked with people doing psilocybin, I think I would love to know that person because I'd love to have a resource to send people to get that kind of support.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, we'll hopefully hear from people. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a couple medical professionals. We have a medical doctor who was a surgeon and an ER doc, and he's one of our facilitators. If you want to feel like there's somebody there who can handle any emergency, it's him. We also have a registered nurse who, has just, a terrific amount of experience and would be able to handle any emergency. And we're only like 3 minutes away from the EMTs. If something happens and we need to call for help, we can have them here really, really quickly. And we've had the EMTs in town into our service center to just let them know what it's like, what they're going to come into if we call them, but we've never had to call them.
Okay. So yeah, you're really well set up. You have a lot of safeguards and a lot of support.
Yeah, the safeguards are the big thing. They're a pain in the butt. They're expensive a lot of times, but it is I think it's the thing that sets the Oregon way of doing psilocybin apart from everybody. The amount of safety that you can feel when you come in.
That's very, very important. Yes.
Mhm.
Well, where can people find out more information if they're interested?
Well, they can come to my website, vitalreset.com. They can put Oregon psilocybin services in their Google bar and go look at what the government has to say about it. The Oregon Psilocybin Services section in Salem has a list of all of the service centers, all the facilitators, all the people growing mushrooms. So you can go through that and see, what you can find. Um, it's different. Every service center does things a little bit differently from the other ones. And I think what's most important is to find a facilitator you feel comfortable with. You feel like you could be safe with, and make sure you take your time. There's no rush, uh, but if it's going to give you relief, you got to keep moving toward it. You can't just put it off forever.
Right. Right. Don't stay
There's
stuck.
just things. Yeah. And then like I said, our blog is really rich. I'm going to be putting out a book pretty soon. We're really working hard to get the book out on how to use mushrooms in Oregon. There's a lot of books out there. Michael Pollan wrote the book How to Change Your Mind, and that was all about his journey into using 4 different psychedelics and what that was like for him. It's a pretty good book. There's a Netflix special, How to Change Your Mind, based on his book. My warning on that is that they follow one person for each one of the psychedelic substances, and they all have great results. So they don't go into the fact that this doesn't work for everybody. There are some people who genetically, and it's a really small, it's less than 1% of people, but genetically they don't process psilocin the same way that other people do, and they might not be able to get liftoff at all. So there's that risk. There's a risk that you just won't have the journey you wanted. You go in for, this has happened to me. I've gone in thinking I want to think about this certain part of my life and make improvements. And the mushrooms just say, no, Heidi, you've been thinking about death too much. We need to talk about why you're thinking about death so much. And then I've got a whole journey on death that I never asked for.
Oh
But
my.
but in the end, it's really helped me be more in the present. So I I feel like even my difficult journeys have been really important and have, led developmentally. And that's another thing. People ask, should I do mushrooms more than once? I used to, like, they told us in school, once a year is plenty. It'll take you a whole year to integrate what you learned. Well, if you're getting 2 weeks to 4 weeks of neuroplasticity every time you do mushrooms and you're actually working with it to make changes, there's no reason you can't do mushrooms more often than that. If you do them more often than once every 2 or 3 months, you might have an attenuated effect because that's kind of what happens. If I take a big dose of mushrooms today, get liftoff, have a great journey, I could take that same dose tomorrow and I'd just feel a little uncomfortable. Like I wouldn't get liftoff because your receptors are still trying to refill themselves and do the work they wanted to do. So for somebody who really wants to be on a self-improvement kick like me, you know, watching, paying attention, feeling the pull to do another mushroom journey and start on another self-development road it's attractive. So we have a few people who come in every 3 months and do a journey and they got a plan.
Well, fantastic. So whether it's a one-time thing or something that you can do more than once to help with that growth, the self-growth, the brain plasticity, um, either way, it sounds like it
Yeah.
depends on the person.
Yeah, I suppose we should talk about price because that is so one of the problems with having a really safe program is that it is more expensive. So the range of what you would pay in Oregon for a journey is probably between $1,200 and $4,000. And what makes the difference in there, um, some of the lower price journeys have a very low amount of preparation and integration support because, you got to cut your corners where you can. And some places you go, and you should ask this if you're looking for a place, they will put you with a facilitator for preparation. And then when you arrive for your journey, you'll probably have a different facilitator. So they might have one person on staff who does all the preparation. And then when you arrive on the day, maybe you've met your facilitator once. So you don't feel as connected or as safe in that particular way of doing things, but it brings the cost down. Another way to bring the cost down is to go with a group. So if you have a group of people, 4 or 5 people, and they all have the same facilitator, again, there's probably a little bit less prep and a little less integration, but it can bring the price down. And we have a sliding scale. So there's the possibility of getting a journey for half price or close to free, but the close to free thing really hasn't worked very well. Like we will have, if somebody's on food stamps, we have facilitators who will work with them for as low a fee as they can, but they can't do that all the time. They're trying to pay their rent.
Right.
And we, as a service center, if we have somebody like that, they can come in and have a free journey with us. We'll completely subsidize it. But they have to do it on a day when somebody else is already in the service center. So we don't want to open up and pay staff to do something we don't get paid for.
Okay. But that's really nice that you do have a sliding scale for people that have lower income.
Yeah, yeah. And then, one of the problems with that is people with lower income are really struggling. And,
Yeah.
if they also have mental health issues, they may not be able to get themselves together to come in for a journey. It might be better for them to come in for a really low dose journey, like just a little thing to push a little bit of flexibility in their brain.
So the dose, it depends. So the doses depends on the situation, on the dosage and how much, and is that, does the price change based on the dosage then too?
Well, they have to pay for the mushrooms separately. And that's based on how much you take. So it can
Okay.
be for a mini dose, it could be $50 for the mushrooms. For a super, the highest dose we can give you, it might be $250. And that has to be paid in cash because it's an illegal substance federally. I forgot to mention that. Federally illegal.
Can you believe that? I mean, it's like these laws are really outdated, is what it seems like to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But we haven't gotten in any trouble. Nobody's come and tried to arrest us for having, basically we probably have 50 doses of mushrooms in our 350-pound safe.
Well, that's good. Hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully federally it'll change too, because it's really I don't they what it's does it like Schedule 1 where it's supposed like no therapeutic
Yes.
benefit?
Yep, that's what that means. No therapeutic benefit and highly addictive. And that's absolutely not true of mushrooms. They aren't highly addictive. And
Yeah.
that's true of most hallucinogens are not addictive. It's just too hard to face taking them again, you know, on a daily basis. If you're
Right.
taking, if you're trying to do a big feel it dose. Yeah.
Well, this has been so informative. I'm sure that it will benefit many people with diabetes that are looking into this treatment for mental health and all other kinds of conditions, really. It sounds like the research
Yeah.
is really just beginning on a lot of different conditions, like ALS too. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really amazing what's happening. And again, there's no guarantee it'll work for everybody, but the research is very strong in a few areas. And then the what's that called when you just have reports, people's
Like
own
anecdotal
reports.
experiences.
Anecdotal. Yeah, the anecdotal reports are really pretty good too for the stuff that hasn't been researched well.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very
For someone
much.
who's suffering, definitely worth a try. I'd love to talk to anybody who's interested.
Yeah, for the pain, if you're in pain, you mean that aspect of it, yeah, that's very hopeful.
Yeah, and that's early research. Although there's a pain and psychedelics conference, a big conference just on pain and psychedelics now. So it's a big focus of research.
Oh, really? Do you know when that's happening?
I think there's one coming up at the end of the month.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, if I find that link, I'll try to probably put lots of resources in the description here.
Yeah, I'll look for the pain link. I got it in my stuff, and I'm going to be at the Stevenson Mushroom Festival that weekend, I think. So there was something in my schedule that's going to keep me from going.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
we'll have a
right.
good conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been fabulous meeting you, and I consider this to be in person. And I just want to wish you well in your diabetes journey, struggle, whatever you want to call it. It's not what you would have chosen, but here you are, and you're making something out of it that's helping other people. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Heidi. Take
Yeah.
care.
Okay. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Bye.
Same. Bye.